Dear audience, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Policy Dialogue, Chisinau to Glasgow, the route of Moldova to COP26. I'm Lilia Kurk, environmental journalist, and I'm honored to moderate this high-level event, during which we are going to discuss about the actions of the Republic of Moldova regarding the climate changes and the commitments assumed by the determined national contribution. We're also going to discuss about the climate ambitions and progresses at the international level. The pandemic showed to us how vulnerable we are, how fragile we are, and how it's important to have prevention. We would like to have a developed society. We would like to have competence. We love progress, but I think that now we have to bring environment protection in the first plan. We have to think about development with zero emissions. The dialogue of policies of today is organized by the Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment in partnership with UNDP Moldova and the Embassy of Great Britain and Italy in Chisinau. The discussion is being broadcasted live in Romanian on Privestiu and Facebook, and in English on YouTube. The participants, you also have the chat from Zoom and the comments from Facebook and YouTube in order to come up with questions to the speakers. We are going to collect them and address them. As well, those who would like to listen in translation the pictures of our guests, please access the button on the right side of your menu in the Zoom platform. The event of today is structured in three discussion sessions that are focused on the joint mission that we all have, and namely to maintain the global warming under 2 degrees Celsius. And now, in order to open the event, I would like to offer the floor to Mr. Ion Perju, the Minister of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment. Mr. Perju, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. Bună dimineața tuturor.
Good morning to everyone. Your Excellency, Mr. Stephen Fisher, you're the Ambassador of UK in the Republic of Moldova. Your Excellency, Mr. Lorenzo Tomassoni, the Ambassador of Italy in Moldova. To Mrs. Al-Khatib, the UN Representative Resident in the Republic of Moldova. Esteemed colleagues and partners.
Regional Development and Environment for the Republic of Moldova. I would like to express the honor to participate in this virtual and already usual event, which aims to initiate discussion with government institutions, development partners, civil society, and academia on Moldova's road to the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, COP26. And during this dialogue, we will identify what has been achieved so far and what remains to be done to have a remarkable presence at the most important annual international climate event from November 2021 in Glasgow. Let me thank you for accepting the invitation to participate in today's dialogue, to wish you productive discussions and express my confidence that the ambitious climate targets set at international level will be successfully achieved in our country with your efforts. Well, in order to make the event more efficient, to even more effective development, I will switch to Romanian with your permission. Stimați colegi, reprezentanții comunității.
Dear colleagues, the representatives of the international community of donors, the development partners, the global warming is probably the greatest threat to human development, and mankind until now didn't face such a serious danger, even comparative with the pandemic from this year and the last year. It is indisputable that the phenomenon of climate change threatens the sustainable development of humanity. Thus, it's very important to undertake actions focused on reducing the intensity of this process as well as to mitigate the consequences of this phenomenon. The Republic of Moldova has joined all the international treaties in the area of climate changes, the UN Convention on Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol, and more recently, the Paris Agreement. By ratifying this international act, our country has recognized the importance of the complex issue of climate change in a global context and has made ambitious commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We are proud of the fact that the Republic of Moldova is the fourth country in the world that updated its national determinant contribution and submitted it to the Secretariat of the Convention. Thus, by 2030, the Republic of Moldova has the ambition to reduce unconditionally the greenhouse gas emissions by 70% below its level registered in 1990. The process of updating the NDC of the Republic of Moldova has been supported by our partners, namely European Union and UNDP, through the project of EU for Climate. Relying on the support of the international community of donors, our efforts are going to be concentrated on carrying out the activities that were going to contribute to fulfilling the ambition of the Republic of Moldova, thus as to be closer to the goals of the Paris Agreement to decarbonize the economy and to improve resilience to climate change. Thus, our actions would be the following: to enhance the national systems of monitoring, reporting, and verifying the greenhouse gas emission, to be fully aligned to the community uh, a key on climate, also to mainstream different sector policies so as to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. Even though the Republic of Moldova is responsible for an insignificant part of the global greenhouse gas emissions, nevertheless, we are the most vulnerable country in Europe to climate changes. Thus, indeed, all those consequences of different climate changes are happening more frequently and more regularly in the Republic of Moldova, and the severe drought that has impacted our country last year is a very well speaking event. I would like to say that the sectors that are most prone to climate changes would be agriculture, health, transportation, and many other sectors that we envisage to work intensively with the international community so as to get adapted to the climate changes. We are aware that in this challenging period which the entire international community is going through, the government efforts are focused on recovering from the economic and social consequences of the pandemic. But at the same time, this crisis provides a major opportunity to rethink the country's priorities. And these major objectives would be very difficult to be achieved without the support of our development partners. And we're talking about the financial support, technical support, technological support from the international community. That is why I think that this would help us to decrease considerably the level of greenhouse gas emissions. In conclusion, I'd like to thank to our development partners for the fact that they are supporting us in achieving our goals. I would like to express the openings of continuing the dialogue so as to have a consolidated position of the country within the COP26 conference. I wish you productive discussions, and I am fully convinced that ambitious goals that have been established at the international level will be achieved successfully with joint efforts in our country as well. Thank you very much, and successes and health to all of you. The ministers, Ion Perju, as you have mentioned, indeed, it's very important for us to rethink the processes that are at the basis of development of our country. And I'm fully convinced that all of this is not going to be just a dream for us, but we have to join our efforts, including with the assistance and support of development partners. Dear Mrs. Dima Al-Khatib, the UNDP resident representative in the Republic of Moldova, I would like to offer you the floor, being convinced that you are going to encourage us from behalf of UNDP in the ambitions that have been committed and assumed at the national level.
Thank you, Lilia. Good morning, Bună ziua tuturor, excellencies, partners, distinguished guests. I'm very glad to be with you today and to join efforts with the Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment, together with the UK and the Italian embassies in this important dialogue on the road to COP26. So thank you very much, Excellency Minister Perju, and Excellencies Ambassadors Fischer and Tomassoni. The COP26 which will be held in Glasgow this year in less than 6 months, will bring the parties together to accelerate action towards the goal of the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It has 4 goals for this event. One is to agree on a step change in commitments to emissions reduction, strengthening adaptation to climate change impact, getting finance flowing for climate action, and enhancing international collaboration on energy transition, clean road transport, and nature. We all know that climate change is the defining crisis of our time, and it is happening faster than expected. As the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has pointed out, the climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is a race we can win. So let's keep that in mind. There is no country in the world which is safe from the devastating consequences of climate change, whether it's rising temperatures, which are fueling environmental degradation, natural disaster, weather extremes, food and water insecurity, economic disruption, conflict, and terrorism in some cases. Sea levels are rising, the Arctic is melting, coral reefs are dying, oceans are acidifying, and forests are burning. And the Climate Action Tracker estimates that the world could limit global temperature rise to 2.4 degrees by the end of the century if all the current climate pledges and targets are fully met. Putting the world on track for 1.5 degrees require much higher ambitions and bold collective actions from all the nations, and particularly the larger emitters. Science also tells us that climate change is irrefutable, and it will require fundamental transformations in all aspects of society: how we grow food, how we use our land, how we transport goods, how we power our economies, etc. And this is the essence of the policy dialogue today, to really look at it from a holistic and a whole of society, a whole of government approach. The key message of our most recent UNDP Human Development Report states that the next frontier for human development will require working with and not against nature, while transforming social norms, values, and government and financial incentives. It makes it crystal clear that human development from now on is about making choices that are good for people and the planet. This is even more important and relevant as the world is dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic impacts, a crisis considered to be one of the most significant global and local wake-up calls that unveil our past, present, and future vulnerabilities and risks. For the past year, Moldova demonstrated leadership by being one of the first countries to update its NDC with ambitious targets to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 88%, with the determination to gradually reach climate neutrality by 2030. UNDP, in partnership with the EU, has shouldered the government efforts in this respect. UNDP is also working with the national partners and the developing partners on many fronts at the central and the local levels to help Moldova in mitigating the impact and adapting to climate change, as well as supporting a low carbon and green transmission at community levels throughout the country. Although, as the minister has mentioned, Moldova is not a major emitter of greenhouse gases at scale compared to other countries, the country is very vulnerable to the consequences of global climate change. In recent years, severe drought and floods have hit Moldova, with major impacts on people's livelihoods, on people's economy, the Moldovan economy. Last year, also Moldova has experienced the most severe droughts in the past 2 decades, which were compounded by the COVID-19 impacts and had caused considerable economic losses and exacerbated the vulnerabilities and inequalities among Moldovans. As of today, it is estimated that climate change solely contributes to an average economic loss of 2.13% of the GDP per year, quite considerable. If we continue with business as usual, without building a climate resilient economy and health systems, the effects of climate change will be aggravated and will continue causing more damage to the country. The complexity and the severity of the climate crisis calls for a more collective action across all sectors and to limit the negative effects of climate change. UNDP is standing ready to step up the efforts of the climate action, and we do hope that bold decisions will be taken at COP26 to meet the commitments of the Paris Agreement. We also would like to see Moldova keeping and continuing to showing leadership when it comes to fighting climate change. I'm really looking forward to the discussions today that will give us more clarity on the way forward in addressing climate change and transitioning to green societies. I would like to also thank you all for your participation and your engagement today. I want to give also a special thanks to our colleague, Vlad Kain, who is one of the 7 members of the Global Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change appointed by the UN Secretary General. So thank you for being with us and looking forward to the discussions. Over to you, Lilia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dimal Khatib. As you have mentioned, COP26 will take place in Glasgow, the UK, and will be presided by the United Kingdom and supported by Italy. Thank you for the encouragement and beyond the data, which actually makes us think. I think it is also very important to have determination nationally to overcome the challenges and provide or come up with examples of how we can overcome climate change and adapt to it. We also greet at this event their excellences, the ambassadors of Great Britain and Italy. So, Mr. Ambassador Fisher, you are for the floor to follow up on the ideas that have been shared here. So thank you, Lilia, very much. It is my greatest pleasure to be here on the way to Glasgow, next to you and with all the participants at this very important event.
Ambassadors, colleagues, friends, I'm delighted to be able to join and contribute to this policy dialogue on climate change this morning. It's extremely timely, it's extremely important. There are, as the Minister and as Dima have already told us, there's only a short time left now before the COP26 conference of parties. But more beyond that, there's only a short time left for us to undo the damage that humanity has been doing over the last decades and centuries. And that's the time clock that's really ticking. In Glasgow, we will host environmentalists, world leaders, civil society organizations, climate specialists, media, of course, and many more who will arrive for this important conference in November. And I think alongside to responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate disaster facing us is the issue for our generation and for the next generations to come. The United Kingdom, together with our Italian partners, are very proud and honored to be hosting this event at this time. And it will be certainly one of the largest conferences that we have hosted in recent years. We expect Moldova's head of state, President Sandu, well, she will certainly be invited, and we hope she will be able to attend the Leaders' Summit between the 1st and the 3rd of November. And we hope that she and the Moldovan delegation will use this event to set out not just how Moldova plans to implement and deliver, but also its very ambitious and extremely creditable NDC2, which the Minister and Dima have mentioned. But I hope we will also hear from Moldova at the event what it needs from the international community, from what it needs from development partners to ensure that that can happen. And some of the kinds of questions that the Moldovan delegation, I expect to be asking at COP26, can be discussed today amongst participants in this dialogue. I also understand that there's interest by our partners in this dialogue in holding further such meetings before November, and we, from the British government and British Embassy's perspective, would welcome that if there is a need, and I think there will be. We've seen the physical layout of the venues that will be used in Glasgow for this meeting, and I can assure you that a huge amount of preparatory logistical work is already underway to ensure that the event can take place physically, in person, and in a format that is safe for all attendees. We saw those children on the excellent video at the start of this session, this event. We saw the children of Glasgow telling us that it was time to act and that they were ready. And I very much enjoyed the different languages of the different children speaking at the end of that video, saying, "We are ready, we are ready." I don't know if it went too quickly for me or whether it wasn't in there, but I didn't hear anybody say "Suntem gata." But you know, we all know that those children in Glasgow that we saw on the video saying that they were ready could easily have been children here in Chisinau or in Balts or in Tiraspol or frankly any other city or settlement in the world. It's all about being ready, and the UK will be ready to host a fantastic conference. It's vital that everyone plays their part. This isn't just about governments and world leaders getting together and making an agreement in Glasgow. This journey that we're on, the journey Chisinau spre Glasgow, is, as I said, a much longer journey than simply from Chisinau to Glasgow. Humanity needs to go much, much further. Our journey is endless and we need to get on with it. We need not only to transform where we are heading, but how we are traveling, both literally, if we think about the global travel industries and technologies, but also figuratively, how we are traveling. We need to travel with a much greater sense of common purpose and willingness to compromise and consider radical change. This event, this dialogue, this policy dialogue, is an example of the kind of conversation that needs to happen everywhere. And that conversation, that dialogue is going to be between many partners. Here in Moldova, I would suggest respectfully that it needs to be a dialogue primarily between Moldovans, between older Moldovans and the younger generation, including those yet to be born. It's a dialogue between the Moldovan state, represented here so admirably by Minister Perju, and may I comment that that was a superb speech which set the agenda for the day extremely well, those opening remarks. It's a dialogue between the Moldovan state, represented by the minister today, and society. Everybody must contribute to this dialogue and to the journey that we're on. Governments, yes, they must lead, but society must respond. And there is no greater subject for discussion over the next years than the one that faces us today. The NDC, as Minister and as Dima have said, shows that this government is serious. It's led the way with the commitments it's made to reduce greenhouse emissions by 70% compared to 1990 levels. It's a world leader in this. It was the fourth country to present its NDC 2, as it's called in the terminology, and it's a very good one. And although, as Minister Perju said, Moldova is a very small polluter, if it could achieve the goals of the NDC, that would put the Republic of Moldova in a very, very elite group of exemplary climate-friendly nations. And we must hope that everybody involved will play their part in achieving those goals. The UK will play the part of a neutral co-host at Glasgow. Our job is to provide the platform for a truly groundbreaking and historic conference. So we will approach it as a neutral co-host with our Italian friends, dedicating ourselves to convening and delivering the conference which the world needs and which will shift the dial, as we say, on tackling climate change, as the conference in Paris did several years ago. But we need to do it again before it's too late. I'm very pleased to say that in the agenda of today's event, David Moran, who is the UK's climate change, or COP ambassador, I should say, for Eastern Europe and Central Asia. He's a member of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, a diplomat, but he's playing this role between now and the conference in Glasgow, and is responsible for this region. He will be joining us, and we'll speak later about 4 key goals that the UK is proposing that governments consider to prevent global temperatures rising above 1.5 degrees and to protect our planet and people from the intensifying impacts of climate change. So David will speak more about policy matters. I wanted to try to give a flavor of the UK's determination to play its part and deliver its responsibility to the world as the hosts. It's fallen to us to host this conference, and we will do it to the best of our ability. We are determined that Glasgow will deliver for all countries, including, of course, the Republic of Moldova. And for that to happen, all countries, including Moldova, need to be very clear about what they want to get out of Glasgow, what decisions they want to be taken there. Today's event allows for a rich discussion of that very question. So with that in mind, I will pass the floor, the cuvântul. I can't think of the English word. I will pass the cuvânt back to you, Lilia, and wish everybody, all participants, a very successful event today. Thank you very much.
Mulțumesc foarte mult, Excelențe, domnule Steven
Thank you very
Fischer.
much, Excellency, Mr. Fischer. I have actually noted the words encouraging, including in Romanian. Together we are ready, we are prepared, we can, and we have observed and noted the openness that you have shared with us and encouragement towards a dialogue with the citizens. I do think it is very important that the entire society has the understanding of the ambition that we have and we aim at with regard to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and becoming a more resilient country to climate change. Mr. Ambassador Tomassoni, Ambassador of Italy, you have the floor. Please, could you share with us Italy's ambitions, and why not, if you could tell us also about the support that Italy could provide to our country, the lessons which we can learn from your country's experience, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Lilia, and good morning, distinguished delegates. Indeed, ambition is Italy's main driver of its partnership with the United Kingdom for COP26. Commitment to climate neutrality by 2050 or shortly thereafter, as well as increased nationally determined contributions, are very high in our agenda. We are conscious that this is not an easy task, yet feel strongly encouraged by the renewed active involvement of main global actors, as well as by tangible results achieved by many other virtuous nations. And these certainly include the Republic of Moldova, which has successfully reduced already greenhouse gas emissions, which are better known as GHGs. And please allow me to congratulate Minister Purju for what Moldova has done so far and for its mid and long-term commitments and plans. Indeed, worldwide, GHG emissions remain on an unsustainable trajectory, despite short-term emission reductions that are essentially due to the impact of COVID-19. Thus, Italy believes that the green economy and decarbonization targets will still represent two main strategic challenges to manage, especially once the pandemic crisis will hopefully come to an end. The COP26 in Glasgow will set a milestone. Indeed, I totally agree with Ambassador Fischer in the completion and implementation of the so-called Paris rulebook, as well, I would say, as in laying the foundations for a sustainable post-COVID world. In view of this decisive event, a significant role is played by negotiations aimed at operationalizing the Paris Agreement. Now, in order to facilitate such negotiations in partnership with the UK, Italy will host a pre-COP26 in Milan from the 30th of September to the 2nd of October. We intend to make good use of this opportunity to help build political consensus and find solutions over important negotiating issues, such as Article 6, the global price of carbon, transparency, adaptation, and finance, of course. But this part will be very left to the discussion, so this is not up to me, but I would really wanted to highlight these issues. Italy sparing no efforts, together with its British friends. And we're doing this including as G20 presidency. Now, in that specific capacity, we have called two ministerial meetings, one on environment and the other one on climate and energy. They will take place in Naples on the 22nd and 23rd of July this year, and will hopefully provide a further contribution to the diplomatic preparation of COP26. In conclusion, Allow me to say that a couple of days before the pre-COP26 meeting, Italy will also host in Milan Youth for Climate event that will provide 400 young people with the unprecedented opportunity to put forward ideas and concrete proposals about some of the main issues on the agenda of COP26 itself. Now, this shows just how much, together with London, Rome has decided to bet on young generations for the future of our planet. And again, I totally agree with Ambassador Fisher on the important role of future generations. I am confident that young generations, including in Moldova, will successfully build upon the deliverables of Glasgow during the next 2 decades. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Tomassoni, for the speech and for the encouragement that you have also shared for us, and the emphasize on the youth and beyond the governments. In the speeches of our distinguished invitees, we have learned about the ambitious plans, but also how much they count and rely not only on heads of countries, of governments and experts, but also how much stake is put on the civil society, youth, trade unions, and in general the whole population, because the involvement of everyone and each one is essential. Now each of us has to act in order to fight the climate change. I would like to continue by watching a short video which unveils the vulnerabilities of Moldova, but also about the path to achieve our climate ambitions. So we haven't, now that we have watched this video, it is time to start the first session, dialogue session dedicated to climate ambition of the Republic of Moldova, to see the political will and the approach of the government. I would like to remind to those watching us that you have the Zoom chat and the comments on Facebook and on YouTube to ask questions to our invitees. We shall collect them and we shall ask them. So the invitees of our session are Valentina Țapeș, State Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment, and Ms. Liliana Guțan, Head of the UN and Specialized Agencies Unit of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integration. Dear ladies, welcome to our session. So Ms. Țapeș, we shall start with you, and I would like to ask you to speak to us in the beginning about the national plans and how can we, or how do we contribute to the achievement of the Paris Agreement objectives with, and what we do in order to keep the temperature well below degrees Celsius. Thank you, Lilia. Welcome everybody at this nice event. I would like to greet your excellencies, dear development partners, dear colleagues and dear audience. Indeed, it is an outstanding event, this policy dialogue organized with regard to Moldova's path towards COP26. I am absolutely convinced that in this event we shall manage to shape the answers on countries' position for negotiations for COP26.
Am să vorbesc despre unde suntem la capitolul politici climatice, ce am reușit să realizăm și care este viziunea de dezvoltare mai departe a țării pentru realizarea ambiției climatice. Deja a fost menționat Republica Moldova este foarte vulnerabilă la schimbări climatice, iar contribuția Moldovei la emisiile de gaze cu efect de seră la nivel global este una foarte modestă, doar 0,026%, însă impactul de pe urma acestora este unul foarte semnificativ. Deja nu mai sunt o raritate pentru Moldova secetele și inundațiile, precum și fenomenele naturale asociate schimbărilor climatice. Republica Moldova este parte la toate acordurile climatice internaționale, având statut de țară în curs de dezvoltare și onorându-și obligațiile care în cadrul acestor angajamente. Deja domnul ministru Perju a menționat acele obligațiuni, acele angajamente pe care le are Republica Moldova. Deci aș vrea să mă refer în special la cea mai actuală obligație internațională pe care de fapt au toate țările parte la convenții și la acordul de la Paris, contribuția națională determinată și actualizarea acestei odată la 5 ani. După prezentarea primului
update every 5 years. After the presentation of the first NDC in 2015, 2020 has been a decisive year in raising climate ambitions and in contributing to achieving the objectives of the Paris Agreement, to keeping the increase in global temperature under 2 degrees Celsius. And the Republic of Moldova managed to assume international obligations that are more ambitious with regard to reducing GHG emissions. And it has been mentioned that the unconditional reduction of GHG in the updated NDC is 70% versus 64-66, which has been set out in the first NDC. And the conditional scenario provides for a reduction of GHGs up to 78% compared to 1990 versus 70%, which is established in NDC, in the first NDC. Ms. Tsepish, I would like to stay a little bit longer with regard to these commitments, and could you please tell us if these if they're if we are, a role model, and there are certain challenges at the government level which should be or could be overcome. What do you think about that? So you're not the first one to ask about this. Often we have been asked if we can say we are leaders in implementing the Paris Agreement and the Convention of the
Atâta timp cât Republica Moldova a fost una dintre primele țări care și-au actualizat și prezentat NDC-ul. Deci, consider că acest răspuns la această întrebare putem avea doar atunci când vom vedea rezultatele implementării NDC-ului și vom avea cuantificată reducerea emisiilor de gaze cu efect de seră în baza activităților implementate. Nu putem nega faptul că lucrul enorm care a stat în spatele actualizării NDC-ului este deja un update of the NDC is already a significant step in achieving the objective of the Paris Agreement. And I take this opportunity to thank the partners engaged in this complex exercise of
establishing the NDC, the European Union and UNDP Moldova. So at the country level, we have low emissions development strategy, which is the national planning instrument on how we achieve the targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, while the NDC sets out the general target, conditional or unconditional. The low emissions development strategy sets out the reduction targets in the 7 sectors which contribute the most to the total of GHG emissions in the Republic of Moldova. So these sectors are mainly energy, agriculture, industry, buildings, transport, waste, and forestry. And therefore, by means of the low emissions development strategy, these sectors have committed to rethink their development path by specific activities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Mr. And climate change means are on the agenda of the country, and adaptation measures also are there to supplement the GHG emissions reduction. Well, you have mentioned a range of sectors where we have to rethink the approaches in order to mitigate vulnerabilities, to better adapt to climate changes. I'd like to ask you about the political will, because all our previous guests and invitees have mentioned the importance, have underlined actually the importance of the political will and the participation of the entire society. Political will at the government level, is it already there? How do you see that?
Țin să menționez că NDC-ul este un document intersectorial. Ministerul Agriculturii, Dezvoltării Regionale și Mediului a promovat acest document, dar de fapt el este unul care implică mai mult responsabilitatea mai multor ministeri. Deci astfel implicarea lui depinde nu doar de efortul Ministerului Agriculturii, Dezvoltării Regionale și Mediului, dar și de efortul mai multor instituții, așa cum ar fi Ministerul Economiei și Infrastructurii,
ministries such as Ministry of Economy and Infrastructure with regard to reducing GHG emissions in energy, transportation, building, as well as climate change adaptation. For instance, Ministry of Health, Labor and Social Protection has the responsibility to adapt to climate change in the sector of healthcare, while the Ministry of Finance is responsible for issues relating to the funding of the implementation of the NDC.
Deci are responsabilități care trebuie să le realizeze și atunci în complex noi am putea să avem un rezultat pozitiv. În acest sens vreau să menționez instrumentul care a fost stabilit și prin hotărâre de guvern, este vorba de Comisia Națională privind schimbarea climei, care a fost instituită prin hotărârea de guvern din 2020, numărul 444, care a creat o platformă de comunicare la nivel înalt cu subiectele
has created a communication platform for the implementation of the UNFCCC, and this platform actually implements is a platform for bringing together all stakeholders in climate change adaptation, including the private sector, the academia, non-governmental organizations. So the operationalization of this platform is on the agenda of the Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment, and I'm glad that at this event we have also the members of the Commission by shared dialogue, by consensus, which will take the decisions with regard to promoting policies and climate change and and other projects that are to be implemented. So we understand that these climate commitments are turned from policies into daily lives. And how can we see that? The political discourse materializing in action. Is this already happening?
Sistem de monitorizare, raportare și verificare care de fapt ne indică acele rezultate pe care noi le atingem și care putem să le constatăm, care sunt reușitele și astfel Republica Moldova a înregistrat progrese la reducerea emisiilor de gaze cu efect de seră în sectoarele producerii energiei electrice și termice cu 19% și agricultură cu 26%. Totodată se înregistrează creșteri însemnate de gaze cu efect de seră față de țintele prestabilite pentru anul 2020 în sectoarele clădiri, 49%,
targets, for instance, in buildings 49%, transportation 37%, industrial processes 39%. So in total, the Republic of Moldova has exceeded the level of emissions planned for 2020 only by around 4%. So of course we need still to work a lot with regard to the implementation of the NDC, in particular the finance aspects, because we have mentioned that we have established conditioned targets and unconditioned targets, and we need the engagement both for the mobilization of financial and budget resources, but as well as we also need the engagement of the private sector. Ms. Tsepesh, I would like to involve Liliana Guțan in this dialogue, the head of the unit for UN and specialized agencies of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integration. Please, could you join our discussions and keep up this idea of having a common understanding of climate ambition? From the perspective of your institution, how can we join efforts? How can we have a dialogue and national commitment that would be shared?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join this discussion in the progress, challenges, and further needs for boosting the dialogue of the Republic of Moldova with the partners on following the road to Glasgow, and not only to Glasgow, but all climate changes and biodiversity-related goals. As honorable previous speakers mentioned, we welcome the UN and the EU's role in increasing the platform for the dialogue and the UK's involvement in promoting and hosting the 26th UN Climate Change Conference scheduled for November 21 at the Scottish Event Campus in Glasgow. Related to Glasgow, we express the hope that it will result in increased commitment from member states to reduce global emission so that we can maintain the global temperature rise level below 1.5 C. It's interesting how this number is calculated by my colleagues, meaning not only the number or the agreement itself, by the way, it's the unanimous international effort. It represents also that we nations stay united behind the science and understand that it actually has an existential value for millions of species, including us. Related to the Moldovan involvement, which you asked me to talk about, I would like to mention that the Republic of Moldova has been actively involved in the global process of reducing the Gs and has recognized the importance of the phenomenon of climate change, assuming commitments as a developing country. Our country constantly participated in the sessions of the Conference of the States Parties to the Framework Convention on Climate Change, and also, as honorable speakers before me mentioned, the Republic of Moldova is a world leader, ambitiously deciding through NDC2 to increase the level of conditional reduction up to 88%. On a personal note, at the first time I have seen the ambitious figures, I said, it's impossible. 88%. Then I said to myself, hold on, the impossible is not a fact, it's an attitude. And we decided to change the attitude. I started with the decision to change my attitude and to help the world to change their attitude towards Moldova. The conditioned reduction level up to 88%, it's possible if Moldova manages to mobilize the support available worldwide, including in the EU and UK as the leading nations of the process. In this regard, Moldova has two major impediments, as Honorable Madam Secretary mentioned. Firstly, is that it does not have methodological tools and does not have sufficient experience. And we also need financial resources for such an activity. If we benefit from the international community's technical assistance, financial and technological support, which means transfer of environmentally friendly and climate efficient technologies, the level of conditional reduction of greenhouse gas emission would be up to 88%. The outcome framework of COP26 will serve as a benchmark in the process of transferring at the national level the objective of sustainable consumption of biological diversity and supporting three dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. And it should be done in a balanced and integrated manner that level no issue and no one is left behind. On a personal note, I believe in the extraordinary potential of ordinary people. This drives me, my colleagues here in Chisinau, and those posted abroad to look at the road to Glasgow as the mean to put value in daily action for getting there. Thus, we wish to ourselves, to our colleagues, and members of the COP26 extended national teams every success in keeping the road and reiterate our support for the ongoing tireless work. Thank you very much.
Mulțumesc mult, doamna Guțan. Avem de la...
Thank you very much from our booth guests, from Mrs. Tapesh and Mrs. Guțan. We see this determination that we always would like to see the people from the civil society, from the behalf of the journalists. We always are asking how we can have the environmental goals not to be focused only on one ministry, but to integrate the entire government, the entire society. So, Mrs. Guțan, how do you perceive the role of your ministry that you are representing, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integration? How you are, as a ministry, how you will be able to facilitate the absorption of the good practices so as to reach all the citizens of the country? You also have talked about the need of some methodology, the need of some experience to be taken over. How do you see this road? Thank you very much for this question. As my colleagues were mentioning, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a partner in this national joint effort. My colleagues and myself from Chisinau and those in missions abroad will have to promote the position of world leader of the Republic of Moldova, as well as to provide to international partners reasoning regarding the possibility of fulfilling this ambitious goal of reducing by up to 88% the greenhouse gas emission. And thirdly, we should not forget about the connection, about the relationship between the world leaders and the land ministries from their home countries. As Mrs. Tapesh was mentioning, we will be the ones to transpose, to translate into the international languages the needs, the possibilities, and the capacities of the Republic of Moldova as a full member of this world effort. Because whenever we are talking about the climate changes, we are not having small countries, big countries, less important countries, more important countries. We just have one planet. We have just one environment, joint environment. And that is why we have a joint effort. Thank you. Thank you very much, dear ladies, Mrs. Tapesh and Mrs. Guțan. It has been a session in which we really have got empowered And also we got the confidence that we will feel the support of the government in our day-to-day activity and love, because the citizens, the population also would like to see all this determination in specific actions, concrete actions, and I'm sure that they will come up. And now let's switch to the next session and let's tackle the topic of the COP26 under the chairmanship of Great Britain in partnership with Italy, to see what are going to be the contributions of the country in relation to this conference, because indeed this is going to be a major event at the global level. COP26 is actually in delay of 1 year because of the pandemic, but all of this has triggered the global challenges on climate changes. At this policy dialogue, we have the occasion to discuss with one of the regional ambassadors of COP26, and namely David Moran, regional ambassador of COP26 from behalf of the government of Great Britain. But also we have as a guest Mrs. Natalia Olofinskaya, the specialist in climate change area, as well as in disaster risk management from the UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub. Thus, let's switch to the second session of discussions. And I would like to remind once again all people who are actually following us. You have the possibility of comment on Facebook. You have the possibility of chat from Zoom platform service to come up with your questions. And we will collect them, and by the end, we will tackle them. Mr. Moran, I would like to invite you in this discussion. Please tell us what is the role of an ambassador of COP26 in order to encourage the ambitious, in order to encourage the actions of the state in some practical areas that you have established as being the main areas of your activity as an ambassador. Welcome to this dialogue.
Thank you very much, and greetings from London. Can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very, very good. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, to have this opportunity to join you, and want to start by thanking the governments of Moldova, UNDP, and the Italian and British embassies in Chisinau for putting together such a strong and interesting program. And I've already been very impressed by the signs of ambition and commitment that are coming out of this discussion. We're at a turning point for the planet, and the COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow this November is our best last chance to act to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. I was asked to talk about the UK presidency's priorities and perspectives. And in short, our aim is to host a COP26 that brings the world together on a clear, fair, and inclusive path to a zero carbon economy. As we all build back better from COVID-19, the goal is to commit to a greener, more resilient, and more inclusive global economy. And Glasgow is the moment when we review progress since the 2015 Paris Agreement and then agree an ambitious way forward. And this means that in less than 6 months, we have to listen widely, take every country's considerations into account, and finalize a balanced agreement. You asked me to explain my role as a regional ambassador. It's very much to facilitate this whole process, working with my colleagues in London, in Rome, and in Chisinau. And to work with you and other partners within government and far beyond it to achieve the goals that we all signed up to in Paris. Now, there has been progress in recent months on our headline goals, but there's still much to do, as people have already commented. And the UK presidency has set 4 top goals. And the first one, and we've been discussing this already today, is mitigation. Countries must come forward with ambitious emission reduction targets by 2030 through their nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, that align with reaching net zero carbon by 2050. And a long-term strategy is key to help each country to define how this can be delivered. Such strategies can be revised, of course, to take new developments into account, and technical support is available. To deliver these targets, countries will need to accelerate the phase out of coal, encourage investment in renewable energy, limit deforestation, and speed up the switch to electric vehicles. So every day counts, as others have said. The later that peaking of emissions occurs, the more rapidly emissions need to increase by 2030. And the earlier that net zero must occur. In other words, if we don't act now, even 2050 may be too late. And the UK has pledged to cut emissions by 78% by 2035, and we're enshrining that in law. Now, NDCs come in various shapes and strengths. Now, we increasingly need to strengthen them. They should be more transparent with good data, measurable targets, and broader in scope, covering more sectors across economies and integrating gender perspectives. Climate change is not gender neutral, and we encourage every country to nominate a gender focal point. Now, NDCs should also be more deliverable, particularly through clearer links to domestic policies, including COVID recovery plans. And of course, COVID has taken a terrible toll, but we can't afford to say recovery first, action on climate later. The two are closely connected. We risk missing growing economic opportunities if we lock ourselves into old, dirty technologies, damaging our quality of life. And it's amazing what we can do if we try. In 2012, coal accounted for 40% of our electricity in Britain. That figure is now less than 2%. And we plan to phase out coal power completely by 2024. Scotland has already done so. And we've quickly built up large renewable capacity and created jobs. There are now more than 400,000 low-carbon jobs in the UK now. Now, the second of the four targets is adaptation, working together to help countries already affected or vulnerable to the impact of the changing climate. We've launched the Adaptation Action Coalition, where countries can share solutions and turn international commitments into concrete support for vulnerable communities. An adaptation commission, an adaptation communication, which can be very short, can be invaluable in spelling out needs, priorities, challenges, and gaps, and it gives others a better strategic understanding. The third goal is climate finance, absolutely critical. Ensuring that the necessary finance and technical support is available. We must make sure that it's in place. The goal of $100 billion a year, that's a goal we have to reach, but we're falling short. And we're pressing developed countries hard to help with this and urging multilateral development banks to make access easier. We've doubled our own international climate finance contribution to £11.6 billion over 5 years. And we need to work towards unleashing the trillions of dollars in private and public sector finance needed to secure a net zero. The private sector's role, absolutely central. Now, finally,
I want just to ask you, ca să rămânem, I will switch to Romanian, ca să rămânem la aceste lucruri
remain and discuss about all these important things that you have just mentioned. You have mentioned about finances. You mentioned about different ambitions on different areas. As a regional ambassador, do you see sufficient determination from behalf of the participants for all these areas? What are the expectations of the countries in relation to these areas? Where are more strengths? Where are more weaknesses in this sector so as to fulfill the ambitions?
Well, these are very good questions. Thank you. And I think there is a high level of focus as we get closer to Glasgow on what needs to be done. But we have, as I've said, further ground to make up. And these discussions are absolutely critical. The fourth goal is about working together, not just to complete the Paris Rulebook, which is important, but bringing together civil society and young people. And all of the society has a stake in getting our response right. And it's really important that this conversation goes across societies. Now, there is an appetite for action. We will continue to work with our partners at all levels, within and beyond government, to encourage greater ambition, to encourage greater financing. And there's a lot of energy and activity going into this right now. And the Italian ambassador spoke about the activities which are going on in the next few weeks in terms of international meetings. There's a lot of bilateral diplomatic discussions, not just foreign ministries or environment ministries, but finance ministries crucial. This is a big, the issue of our generation, as we say, of our time. So there is there's a momentum which must be increased even further. And to go back to your words, the role of a regional ambassador is to work not just within the region that I cover, but with other countries elsewhere who can help with that finance and technical support. And I just want to close my remarks by saying circumstances differ, but the economic trends remain the same. The world is changing quickly, and the case for action is strong, with renewables rapidly becoming cheaper, and in many places, fossil fuel investments are becoming less economic. And there are real opportunities here. Time is short. Targets are important, but as people have been saying already, they must translate into action and quickly. And I'm so pleased by the forward-looking theme of the next session. And I want to close by saying I recognize Moldova's ambitious commitments. We will continue to support Moldova in delivering their climate goals. I know the British Embassy is working with a range of partners in Moldova and in various activities. And finally, I spent a lot of time in your beautiful country some years back and saw in your natural legacy much which is worth preserving. I look forward to working with Moldova and others to deliver a truly ambitious and inclusive Glasgow agreement. I hope there are more meetings like this. This is a really good example of a broad discussion. And maybe the next one, I can be there in person. Thank you.
Mulțumesc mult, domnule Moran. Ne bucurăm că nu vă este străină.
Thank you very much. We are so glad that the Republic of Moldova is not a foreign country to you, meaning that you already have visited it. And we would welcome you to come back as well in the future. And please stay with us because we would like also to have a joint dialogue afterwards with Mrs. Natalia Ovtinskaya. Mrs. Ovtinska, as a specialist in the area of climate changes and disaster risk management, please continue this subject that has been studied by Mr. Moran. How do you assess the conditions, the circumstances, the situation in the region? And if you have visited the Republic of Moldova, how did you find it? And how do you assess the ambitions that has been committed by our country?
Thank you so much. It's first of all, good morning, dear colleagues. It's a true privilege for me to be able to address you during this exciting event. I would like to thank sincerely all our partners in Moldova, in Italy, in the United Kingdom, to setting up this really very timely and excellently organized event. I certainly have been to Moldova, and this country could have easily been my home. I always feel truly home when I have been visiting, and I personally work in climate change adaptation field. So we had lots of discussions, and we were setting up new initiatives addressing climate risks to Moldova's communities and economies. So I know directly about the risks and vulnerabilities that your country is facing because of the climate change. And we've been working a lot to address those. But more than that, I would like to present on a broader UNDP work related to promotion of the green and climate policies in the country, support the NDC revisions and road to Glasgow. I have to say that for UNDP, our road to Glasgow started in 2019 at the UN Climate Summit, where the administrator of UNDP first announced our, at that time, new and extremely ambitious corporate global initiative called Climate Promise. And I would like to present you probably a few slides to make you more familiar with this work, which we've been implementing in your country as well. So I hope you can now see my slides. So the Climate Promise is the corporate initiative that was set up to support at least 100 countries, and now we are at 115, to enhance nationally determined contributions, to enhance NDCs towards an increased climate ambition. And I have to say, I've been with my organization over 20 years. I have to say it is one of the most unprecedented initiatives for my organization, because it's really consolidated at a great broad scale, expertise, financial resources, human resources, partnerships, knowledge towards this ambitious goal. And within this, I would like to underline, and I will do it again and again throughout my presentation, that Moldova has been always a champion in this region, in our region, and among the champions globally in implementing and supporting and working with us under the Climate Promise. Climate Promise is very much built upon our partners and the collaboration with our partners. Now more than 35 organizations globally that include UN agencies, international finance institutions, bilateral partners, think tanks, universities, academia, private sector. And that most probably have the core factor of our success. The Climate Promise is an important partner for the Global NDC Partnership Initiative and has been contributing to support NDC partnerships objectives globally. Under the Climate Promise, we have been offering 5 service lines to support the countries with their NDC updates and the road to Glasgow. The first and the foremost, the most important, is the one that actually all speakers today already touched upon. It is about supporting the dialogue in the society, within the government, with the private sector, with youth, in order to build the ownership over the ambitious climate targets and climate action. And throughout the countries where we are working, this is always the priority for this work. But Climate Promise has been also supporting a lot of technical studies, technical assessments, in order to review, align, update existing NDC targets and measures, incorporate new sectors or new greenhouse gases, assess costs and investment opportunities to implement NDCs, and finally, to support countries setting up rigid, transparent monitoring and evaluation frameworks. When we launched this initiative in 2019, and when we rolled it out in 2020 in our region, including Moldova, that was before the COVID pandemic really became one of the biggest crises actually we are facing. By now, we actually aligned the work under the Climate Promise and the work towards NDC's revisions with the COVID recovery work that UNDP has been supporting by aligning and integrating NDC measures and strategies into COVID recovery plans in order to secure green recovery from the pandemic, aligning climate and NDC finance with recovery finance, strengthening capacities towards whole of the government approaches and this intergovernmental dialogues for green recovery from the pandemic. A few words about our progress. This is a global progress, but again, I will come back again that when we speak about progress in any fora, we always speak about Moldova, I have to tell you. So we now work in 115 countries globally. More than 60 countries are linking NDC enhancement with the green COVID recovery effort. 80% of developing nations who announced enhanced commitments at the Climate Ambition Summit were Climate Promise countries. And what has been acknowledged is that the NDC revision, NDC update work that is supported under the Climate Promise not only results in greater ambition, but also results in more solid, higher quality information and data behind the climate pledges. We've been releasing global progress reports on this initiative that have usually thematic focus as well on energy, forests, youth, gender. And throughout the work over the past year, we tried to support countries not only directly with financing and technical assistance, but also through lots of knowledge products and thematic briefs, webinars on various aspects, technical aspects on NDC revisions, including gender has been very important topic in our work, nature-based solutions, water, agriculture, and those areas, youth, absolutely. And many of those areas, technical areas, are important for Moldova, not only now for the NDC that has been already submitted, but also for the NDC implementation. We have came up with the real-time dashboard to track real-time the results under the Climate Promise, the level of ambition, the level of technical assistance needs, and outputs of this work throughout the work in each and every country. I mentioned already that in our region, the Climate Promise is builds upon a kind of very broad and solid architecture and support streams. Besides the UNDP core funding that we've been investing, it's also support of many partners and donors. In our region specifically, we enjoyed support from the European Union, Germany, Italy, United Kingdom, SIDA, and specifically in Moldova, as it has been mentioned already, the work is supported through the EU-funded EU for Climate program. And that's very important because this work is not going to close or to finish when we reach Glasgow. It will continue with the longer term, several years of planned action on climate policy development that will include many aspects beyond the revision of NDC, but also towards implementation of those ambition targets. And today, colleagues from your government mentioned that implementation is as important as the ambitious climate pledges. So finally, this is my last slide. This is to underline the diversity of the initiative and the results achieved so far. So once again, we are extremely grateful for our colleagues to Moldova to be able to report about the the results and the ambitious revised NDC that was one of the first, the fourth NDC submitted globally last year. We also work on low emission development strategies or long-term strategies, and Moldova has been updating its LEDs now. We have been working on NDC implementation strategies and roadmaps, NDC financing and investment strategies, climate budgeting instruments, and integrated climate finance frameworks. Gender, as I mentioned, has been an important tool, but I haven't underlined it well enough, but adaptation has been actually an important focus of our work. And once again, in Moldova, we already had a history of more than several years actually, working on the first phase of national adaptation planning process. And this year, we were very happy to launch the Green Climate Fund supported second phase of the national adaptation planning work. Extremely important to all countries is enhanced monitoring, reporting, and verification or transparency of the climate action. And this has been supported in Moldova as well. I also would like to mention the work with youth and engaging youth in climate action and informing and empowering youth. And for several years already in our region, we've been working on climate education program covering schools and teachers and young students. And once again, Moldova joined this program several years ago in 2018 and has been one of the most effective countries that most effectively rolled out and launched this exciting educational program through your educational system.
Vă rugăm ca să vroiam să zic că trecem exact la aceste momente.
I would like to say that we exactly are tackling now these are moments that are so important about the young people, about the involvement of the education sector, about the engagement of youth. And if you allow me, I would like to again invite in our discussion Mr. Moran for a brief question by the end for both of you. How do you perceive how this such important document as NDC to be a living document, yeah? What would be requested from the government of the state, as well as from the Republic of Moldova? How to make these documents to be living documents? So Mrs. Natalia, Mr. Moran, please, you can intervene both of you so as to provide an answer to this question.
If you would like me to start, there are several things. One, and probably most important, as I mentioned, is maintaining the dialogue in the society with young people, with private sector, very important, with different groups of the society on the climate ambition, on the climate targets, on the climate action objectives in your country, so that the government feels the support from its people. But then the strategies like the NDC has to be converted into the plan, like NDC implementation plan, and has to mainstream into the national sectoral plans in different sectors. Agriculture is super important for Moldova, as well as industry and transport and waste and forestry, absolutely. So the targets that the country set for itself, which are very ambitious targets in NDCs, as then have to be mainstreamed into the national sectoral policies that will require also support from private sector.
Well, thank you very much. I very much agree with what's just been said. I think it's very important that this is a living process. Fortunately, the Paris Agreement mechanisms, which indeed require us to ratchet up ambition constantly to meet the challenge as it evolves. And part of what presidencies do is to constantly review the ambition, the level of global ambition. And that means that we will be talking, the Italians, others, who will be chairing COP27, will be coming to talk to partners within and beyond government to see, how do we keep up with what needs to be done. How can we best work together regionally, globally, and individually to make a difference? And you'll see that Britain will constantly review our own ambition. There'll be a series of announcements from here right through to Glasgow. And by the way, our presidency only starts at Glasgow. The Chileans have the presidency at the moment. We've got a whole year in which we can work with you further beyond that summit to make it happen.
Mersi foarte mult, mulțumesc onoraților oaspeți, domnul
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear guests. Thank you very much, Mr. Moron, the regional ambassador of COP26, and thank you very much, Mrs. Natalia, the specialist in climate changes and in our disaster risk management, for this interactive session and very interesting session. And thank you for pointing out the elements that we are going to find in the last session in relation to supporting the national efforts for different achievements. So let's switch to session number 3. And I would like again to remind you, those who are watching us, you may come up with comments on Facebook and in the chat on Zoom, so as to come up with your questions. Probably all over this dialogue, you have asked yourselves when we are going to switch from policies to commitments in practical way, to the practical carrying out. Who is going to help us in order to get adjusted to the climate changes, including the most vulnerable ones? Now we are going to find out what is the aim of the financing program, what is the role of the business, civil society, and young people, and we are going to discuss this aspect with the guests from session number 3. Namely Mrs. Inga Podorogin, the specialist in programs for climate change, Mariana Rufa, executive director for European Business Association, Roman Banari, the secretary general of the National Youth Council, and Aliona Isak, the activist in environment area. As far as you noticed, we have the most of the speakers for this session, so that's why we're going to focus a lot on the interactive dialogue.
Începeți dumneavoastră să ne relatați mai multe despre sprijinul pe care îl acordă PNUD Republicii Moldova în acțiunea climatică. Ce putem face?
So what can we do? What would NDC do, a document that would be successfully implemented? What would be its impact, and how should we see the UNDP role in supporting these efforts at the national level? So thank you, Lilia, dear participants. If I may, I will speak English, and I will also share with you some slides that I have prepared for today in order to show
Okay. Scuzați, sunt câteva probleme, dar încercăm încă o dată. Deci, merg imediat la slide-ul care reprezintă NDC, deci
I will speak about the slide that is the most essential in this area. So a lot has been spoken about this document. Actually, this is a document which had been updated. The first iteration of this document has been drafted in 2015, and on the slide you can see what this NDC is today. So we have the mitigation part and the adaptation part, and it is very good that this NDC has this adaptation part included in it, and you can see the areas reflected in the adaptation. As regards the mitigation, you can see the sectors and the percentage. So I will switch to English.
Part, you will see
the percentage of the greenhouse gas emissions that has to be reduced from each sector. So the sectors are quite usual ones, and of course the energy sector is the most intensive in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So how we can, the NDC consists of several building blocks, and a revised NDC actually is the start. Is just the beginning, yes, of the 5-year NDC cycle. It requires countries to have in place systems, processes, and tools to support the phases of design, review, implementation, monitoring, and revision in an efficient and transparent manner. So I will, in the next slide, I will quickly walk you through the each of these building blocks and how UNDP is providing its assistance to this. I just want to mention that these building blocks are very much in line with what has been mentioned so far, and especially the priorities of the COP26 presidency, such as finances and coordination and implementation of actions. So let me start from coordination. Coordination is about establishment of mechanisms or designating an authority to coordinate NDC planning, implementation, and monitoring. And here, this entity has to have a special role for the coordination across sectors, institutions, and various stakeholders group. Of course, this role is for the Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development, and Environment. And additionally, it was mentioned today the establishment of the National Commission for Climate Change, which has been approved by the government decision last year. And this commission, of course, has the mandate of monitoring the NDC implementation and align countrywide activities and support received, technical assistance received in line with the NDC targets. So the second building block is the strategy. It has already been mentioned that NDC is a vision. It's a vision on how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And in order to implement, it needs a strategy. In Moldova, the role of this strategy for implementation of NDC is for the low emission development program. It is being now developed by UNDP through its EU for Climate project funded by EU. And the expected deadline for this program to be released is December this year. So the next building block is mainstreaming of NDC targets, and this is the activity where countries are suggested to mainstream their NDC targets. In other words, they have to integrate or align them into national climate policies, strategies, and laws. And you can see that it's a quite complex process. Here we have 3 layers: national, sectoral, and local. And of course, some of these layers are more developed than the others. And by instance, I'm speaking about mainstreaming of NDC targets into the sectoral plans and budgets, where UNDP has already provided guidelines for greenhouse gas emission reduction from waste and energy sectors. Also, currently, it is being done the work of mainstreaming NDC into National Energy and Climate Plan. And similarly, because the construction sector, the building sector is very energy intensive too, we have provided support to promoting climate proofing buildings and infrastructure. The activities are to be initiated also to mainstream NDC targets into the local level, subnational plans and budgets, and this will be done in several realms through our National Adaptation Planning project. And of course, the so-called energy and climate, sustainable energy and climate action plans for localities will also be developed for 4 localities in the Republic of Moldova with UNDP support. The finance strategy, of course, it has been mentioned today that the finance is the key issue. Yes, if there is no finance, then the activities for implementation of NDC could stop, and that is why, with our support provided to the Low Emission Development Program, we are providing also some initial estimates on how much it will take the implementation of NDC. Of course, more detailed estimates under each sector will be done separately. Finance mobilization. So when we speak about finance mobilization, we speak about both national public sources and the private sources, international fund and donors, which are very relevant to meet the conditional NDC targets. So,
eu aș vrea, doamna Podorogin, să facem aici
Ms. Podorogin, I would like to ask you to stop here and include also in our discussion Mariana Rufa, because we are speaking about the money. Where is the money? The economic operator. Could you please tell us, Mariana Rufa, if businesses of Moldova are ready to align to the climate ambitions of our country? And I would like to ask you to complement what Ms. Podorogin says. So how about the finance from businesses? Dear Lilia and dear excellences, honored audience, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this, for the invitation for this event, a very actual and relevant and important event. And indeed, the role of the business is absolutely crucial in everything that is correct management of policies at the country level. By holding businesses to account, in particular in the circumstances that we have ended up. We have mentioned all the policy papers possible, policy papers to which the Republic of Moldova is the party. This is also about the Paris Agreement, the NDC, the Association Agreement, which is a commitment for the Republic of Moldova, the DCFTA, which indirectly, sometimes directly, is also related to these climate changes. And not lastly, very many initiatives of the European Union, Green Deal, and many other documents and policies, and ambitious documents, policies. So policy papers, quite ambitious policy papers launched by the European Union. So let me put it like this. We, from the business, we come with very clear and very specific messages. Because this is about the responsibility which the business already shows, and I would like to give you only a few examples in this regard. On the other hand, this is about an institutional framework, and you, Lilia, asked a very important question. How could we make this NDC document a live one? Well, that's an essential question or essential issue for this event. To make it a living document, it takes 3 component parts. First of all, it's the institutional framework at the country level, which would be functional, both in fact and by law. It's about the process which operates, and where all the stakeholders know their rights, know their obligations, and honor them. And equally important, it is the response or holding to account each component, but at the same time, in parallel, there should be appropriate financial documents which do not only derive from the association agreement, but without which the financing of these complex systems is impossible, or the operation of these complex systems is impossible. Just to share with you a few data where we stand beyond policies. So we speak about the Annex number 11, the association agreement, beyond these international documents to which the Republic of Moldova is a party that I have mentioned already. So we speak of a problem we believe is the most urgent problems is the volume of waste. And why volume of waste and how we relate this problem to the climate? Because out of over 3,000 landfills, unauthorized landfills in the Republic of Moldova, which have waste of different type, and as a result of their decomposing and the production of the greenhouse effects that these chemicals penetrate the underground waters, and beyond what is happening at the level of the soil, we realize very well that there is an impact not only on people's health, but also on the agricultural produce, the atmosphere, and so on. This is absolutely destructive. What I would like to include today in my speech, because we are also limited in our speech, I would like to speak about the household waste, which is 70% of all the waste. Or first of all, I would like to mention that at the level of policy framework, the Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment, with a view to aligning to the European acquis, has implemented already the decision of the government 212 on approving the regulation on electric and electronic devices waste, and this is already something positive. We also mean here the decision number 586 on approving the regulation on managing batteries and accumulators. And this is important because we have producers, we import these and then there is a mechanism to collect them, and it's also the decision of the government 561 on approving the regulation on packaging and packaging waste, which create one of the worst problems, which has an extremely negative impact on climate. As I was saying, there are over 3,000 unauthorized landfills. 70% are of packaging waste, and 166 tons of packaging waste. And Ms. Rufa, I would like to just to keep this focus a little bit. Could you tell us, are the businesses ready to align and support these very important documents that you have mentioned? Because beyond the requirement that we have with regard to the citizens, to individuals, and it is also very crucial to secure the participation of the business sector. That's exactly what I wanted to underline, Lilia. Thank you. And when we speak of the implementation of the principle of the extended manufacturer responsibility, according to the association agreement, it comes to hold to responsibility the businesses in the process of waste management. Well, this is about creating a national level system where businesses have only a part of the responsibilities. And to move directly to the topic, I would like to give you the example of this mechanism. So the EBA has been actively involved throughout the years in promoting this economic mechanism of the producer's extended responsibility, which is a decisive mechanism to ensure the responsibility of the businesses which already pay the pollution fee when importing commodities which has packaging, including when they place them on the market. And we also speak here about the producers, which means that businesses are already held to the account by paying this fee. Unfortunately, this fee today is targeted at other goals or other purposes than managing waste and managing or dealing with the landfills. That's what I wanted to ask. Is the money getting to the environment? And this is what we wanted to hear. And I would like to underline this at this event. We would like that from the speeches that you make and then your speeches that you share with us, I want to make sure that the money, and you can confirm that, if the money is used for addressing environmental issues. And if I may, I would like to include also in the discussions the young people and the civil society part. so that in the end we could also have a joint discussion. And I would like to invite our colleagues from the National Youth Center, which participated at a very interesting exercise. And this is about the assessment of the SDGs.
Perspectiva sectorului asociativ.
So, Mr. Banari, Mr. Roman Banari, could you tell us, please, the perspective of the civil society sector? We have heard here the vision from outside, the vision of the development partners. What does the civil society say? What have you determined as an assessor? Dear colleagues, excellences, and all those listening to us, indeed, all of us at the National Youth Council, we have been actively promoting the young people and the governmental agenda to make sure that their voice is heard when promoting the sustainable development goals. This process has shown actually how much interest there is among the young people for the environmental issues. In the context of the campaign which we have implemented, there had been several stages, and in the context of the competition that we have developed, and this was about media ambassadors for the sustainable development goals, and the young people have come up with a number of initiatives or photographs which came to show their attitude towards the SDGs. And we have been very surprised when the most of the young people have come and reported on environmental issues in their communities. And that actually makes us think that the young people are very engaged in promoting these values of identifying the and not at transposing at the local level the SDGs. And obviously they want more engagement in these dialogues, which refer to the engagement of the young people in decision-making processes related to the environment, including because we speak about the young people only when sometimes we have events here and there, but the young people in the universal assessment within the framework of the agreement, which was the process in parallel with the governmental process. So the young people provided lots of recommendations to the government. And with regard to the environment, there was interest from the young people to a grant program that would be focusing on the young people to ensure the transposition at the local level of these SDGs. We have very many youth initiatives where young people have initiatives of cleaning up the areas and so on. So one of these initiatives are limited to a very limited area or just to the desire of wanting to engage. As a National Youth Council, we have been involved in a group to develop the middle term budgetary framework, and we as the Youth Council have proposed to the working group under the Ministry of Education to create a grant program to localize these SDGs with focus on environmental issues. Unfortunately, the probability of having this initiative approved is not very high. However, we have just tried. And also in the we have proposed to create a hub for the SDGs that would represent initiatives for young people, where the young people could develop and put forward initiatives which they have. But obviously, neither here I have this certainty that this would be initiated after all. But the fact that we have placed on the government agenda together with the Ministry of Education the young people that have developed the concept of the regulation, and I hope that very soon this regulation will be approved and the young people would be involved in the process of promoting issues which they see at the local level, and certainly their voice would be heard not only in Moldova but at the UN as well. Well, I would like to see whether the young people to talk to the young people through Alona Isak. If the young people feel this mandate which has been given to them, we have seen very important proposals the proposals for starting a grant program for the young people to make them more active at the local level. Alona, you have certainly participated as a young activist, as a young environmental activist. What do you think? How could we make it like that the messages that we have heard today from high-level guests and decision makers, which can change policies in our countries, in their countries, how would you assess and what would you say that we need to do so that these messages are not wasted? Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the voice of the youth here at this event. We, the young people, are aware that in the future we will face severe problems in all areas in relation to climate change, but we don't want to be passive about that. We want to change, and we fight as never before, but we need as wide engagement as possible among young people in relation to decision-making processes related to the environment to be heard. So we demand for more action from the government that would, keep the global temperature increase under 2 degrees, support for different programs and strategies. And there's a need actually for strategies that would work and would have results with actions and that would be visible and measurable. Well, have you involved as a representative of this generation, which is actively involved and which is very active? Do you feel that the role of the young people is so important that they could be the change? I do believe in that because we young people are the most mobile and most flexible, and we can adapt. I have participated in the campaign for the Sustainable Development Goals. I participated in different trainings, workshops, and so on. And the young people, other young people that I see are quite engaged in these processes, and I see the willingness from their side. This is really great. I'll just give you the floor in a minute because we have also another young person that has managed to get to the General Secretariat of the UN, Vladislav. I would like to ask you to step in, but first I'd like to ask Alona, your expectations. What would you ask from the government, from the decision makers? Well, we, the young people, we come up with proposals and recommendations which do not require capital investments, but do require political will and the creation of the legal framework. We ask that in the education system we have the curriculum, we have an ecological education with focus on environmental conventions and topics, and should be included in the curriculum starting with the kindergarten until university, regardless of the specialization. The second, we would like to recreate and recreate centers for young people, children, young people, the young naturalists, again, that would educate children on environment. There would be training camps and different projects on renewable energy and or the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And also there should be information trainings, training courses on climate change and for other categories of people, orphanages, elderly homes, and also prisons, so that everybody is educated. Again, information courses focusing on the nationalized targets of SDG 13, climate action, in particular for decision makers, for civil servants from rayon councils and local mayor's offices, because it is up to them to implement the policies in the area of environment. So there's one more point. I would also like to have established a national climate change adaptation center with a purpose to provide training, assistance in the implementation of environmental projects, but also the center could be providing various kind of support for the private sector, for the governmental sector, and for other areas of activities, energy, agriculture, transportation. Well, your proposals are really good. I would like to offer some time to Vladislav Kai, but not before highlighting the fact that you have really well synthesized these priorities and you have focused on the need of ecological education. This is what we have been promoting throughout the years, also as environmental journalists. We always promote the concept of importance of including environmental education in the area of education, the curriculum. So you make history now. You are the first member of the Youth Council on Climate Change under the UN General Secretary General. So, and you also come from here. So, what is your message for the young people in this honorable position that you're holding? Thank you very much, Lilia, for your question. Good afternoon, everyone. I understand that we are ending our 2 hours marathon, and this is why I'll be brief. As to me, first of all, my mandate, my competences as an economist, refer rather to developing new strategies and ideas on working with youth, because I strongly believe that this is a problem for our generation, in particular in the Republic of Moldova and in general in the Eastern Europe, that needs to be addressed already now, so that, and at the same time, it is very important that the competences that I get at the competences that I get in the consultative group would be also shared at the national level, and this is why it is we have shared experience with the young trade unions and or youth trade unions, and this is why I would like to share briefly a few messages with my colleagues in the government, with Ms. State Secretary Ms. Tsapesh, so that we can institutionalize the good practices of cooperating with the youth as policymakers in cooperation with the National Youth Council. And because in the European countries such as Denmark and Poland, such a mechanism under the climate youth centers have been established as a result of the resolutions of the first Youth Climate Summit of 2019, and it works quite well. This is why, if this format is interesting and there would be a desire to get engaged, I would be very happy to help. And the second message would be to complement a little bit what Alona was speaking about. Climate education. This is something which we should not even be asking for. We need to ask to execute this idea as one of the provisions of the Paris Agreement, because the obligation to provide climate education, environmental education, is there in Article 19, and the notion action for climate empowerment that has been approved before the Paris Agreement is an important element of success in climate, and it is an obligation of the Republic of Moldova. Thank you very much for this discourse and encouragement of the young people. Could you share with us a call to the young people, such as Alona and others, how to be more active, just in a few words?
First of all, I'm not a supporter of the recipes that would be applied for everyone, as are the colleagues to find also their own specialized way. Educate yourselves together. Try to encourage and improve your capacities. And as well, try to focus not only on specific actions, but also try to be active in relation to the development and implementation of policies. Because in order to become a green businessman, that is very important. So find your way and get on this path. Thank you very much, Vladislav. We also have some questions that we have already tackled over the dialogue. Roman Banare has raised his hand. Roman, would you like to add something? We would like to provide to you the floor. And maybe very briefly. So Vladislav actually partially already has taken my answer, my reply until my intervention, but thank you very much, Vlad, for what you have mentioned, and thank you very much for being with us whenever we organize activities related to environment. And already what you have mentioned, we already have developed a direction within our council focused on environmental issues and problems. And we will try our best to promote it. But also, Lilia, you asking what the young people can do and how we can motivate them. Actually, I would reverse the question. And I would say what the people from the government can do so as to motivate the young people to be part of the decision-making process. So indeed, we need mechanisms for engaging young people, participation of young people in decision-making in different events, national, international events. We should have some space for young people because they are the generators of change and they are promoting different values. But unfortunately, young people don't have space for discussion and for harnessing their ideas. Actually, the ministry or the MEC has actually generated recently the idea of participating of young people in commissions at the local level. I think that over here there is a possibility to involve young people in decision making, and I think that the government has to pay much more attention to participation of young people in this kind of processes. That young people will come up with initiatives and will have an impact on environmental problems. Well, I didn't succeed to mention some very important things in relation to waste. Yes, Mrs. Rupa, please. So I wanted to mention about the involvement of the local public authorities. They have the local economy, they have independence, they have the local governments, and unfortunately, for the time being, they are not well responsible, not well accountable, and they don't get involved in creating systems at local level, for instance, for waste management. For instance, selecting the waste that afterwards can be processed depending on the type of the waste. Because whenever talking about waste management over here, we again need some competence. So we consider that business engagement already exists, but nevertheless, it's also important to involve the local authorities and central authorities, and not only from the point of view of the legal framework, but also from the point of view of the normative mechanisms that will describe very well the process, but also will come up with different fiscal triggers, which currently are missing or are being applied currently not correctly. Thank you. Thank you very much for all these elements that you have pointed out about the role of the local public authorities. We didn't forget about them because they really are very important alongside all the other stakeholders of the society that have to get involved. We have a question for Mrs. Valentina Tapesh. So the question is from Mr. Valentin Chebotar, and you have this question in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Chebotaro, for being so active and for being active. Mrs. Tapesh is over here with us, and the question is about the targets and commitments assumed by the Republic of Moldova and the support of development partners in achieving the targets from the Paris Agreement. So the question is, how do we make that the data, the presented figures in the policy document of NDC to be real, to be fulfilled, and not to become just figures on paper? Thank you, Lilia. First of all, I would like to highly appreciate the event organized today. Indeed, we have a very good result. We have a huge support towards COP26. I think that we have achieved it today based on the discussions that we have had during this event. Now, in relation to the question from Mr. Chibotaro, I would like to mention that indeed we already have had this kind of questions from other persons as well. And probably it will be nice to voice out this topic for the general population as well. NDC, first of all, has been a participatory development process. It was not developed by a narrow group of specialists, but we have involved the line ministries that have been listed during this event, that have been voiced in this event. As well, it has been based on the methodology of the Republic of Moldova and the conventions that the Republic of Moldova is part of. Starting with 1990, 2016. I have mentioned in my presentation that the basic document that in which we transpose the targets that we would like to achieve would be the strategies for development with reduced emissions. So the intermediate targets that have been established in 2016 have already been achieved. And according to NDC2, we already have established targets that are to be achieved by the Republic of Moldova by 2030. So I have mentioned that we need effort not only from behalf of the ministry, but we need the efforts of all the line ministries for the segments that they are responsible for. So we have conditioned and unconditioned targets. And whenever we are going to attract investments so as to achieve these targets, we will focus mainly on the conditioned targets, and normally the conditioned targets will be achieved with the support of the ministries and institutions that are responsible directly for them. Thank you very much, Mrs. Tapesh. I think that I have found the answer in relation to this question. I really hope that Mr. Chibataro also has found some answers. If no, I invite you to continue this dialogue with other occasion, but I would like to invite or to ask our guests, do you feel the need to add something right now so as to come up with a good stop for our conference, for our dialogue? Because indeed we have had a marathon, as some of the speakers have mentioned. So if you need now to come up with some final comments, I would provide you some space for intervention. And please let me know if there is anyone who would like to add something by the end, some key conclusion. Meanwhile, until you think who would like to intervene, I would like to add that on the chart we have had discussions, we have exchange of replies, we have also a proposal over here from Mr. Vladislav Kaim about a direction that was not tackled today, and namely the need to create a mechanism for professional training of negotiators, young negotiators. Yes, indeed, it's very important to see also young people in the national delegations of negotiators. And if there is nothing else to add, allow me to end the event over here. We have heard today key words today during this dialogue of Chisinau towards Glasgow, route of Moldova towards COP26, Like the keywords would be civil society, government, business, local government. Very important words. We would really for these words to be switched into actions. But I think that the most important over here would be to focus on the word together. Together from global to local, together from a high level of development to our joint development, together from nation towards person. Just together we'll have this chance to create a greener and more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you very much for participating at this policy dialogue. I would like to thank the speakers, the guests, the excellencies. I also would like to thank the online participants for joining this discussion on the dialogue regarding Moldova towards Glasgow. The event of today has been organized by Ministry of Agriculture, Regional Development and Environment in partnership with UNDP Moldova, Embassy of Great Britain and Embassy of Italy in Chisinau. Over here, we would like to stop our live broadcasting and all the best.
Mulțumesc tuturor. La revedere!
Mulțumim foarte